Hey legends, welcome along to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart, and we're getting into another little review here of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is Season 3, Episode 9. Episode is called The Wish, and actually a really, really good episode. And one that I could just about remember, but in all fairness, in this rewatch of it, there's a few little elements in there that had completely slipped my mind. But wonderful, wonderful series nonetheless. And this one, of course, we've got the backlash of everything that happened in the previous episode with Cordelia finding out about Xander and Willow, and the ramifications of their actions on the friendship in general with the whole group of the Scooby Gang, as they're known in the show. At the beginning of the episode, Cordelia returns to school, and she's meeting up with Harmony and her ex-group of the cool kids, and yes, they pretty much reject her straight off, and the taunter is Xander's cast off. She goes to the Bronze later that night, where Buffy accidentally humiliates her further by knocking her into a pile of rubbish in front of her friends outside the Bronze while Buffy is slaying a vampire. And Cordelia decides that, her life was so much better before Buffy came to Sunnydale, and she kind of blames Buffy for everything. She met a new girl at school called Anya the previous day, and Anya is, from the word go, she's hanging out with Harmony and the other girls, but she does try to connect with Cordelia, and she's trying to build a bit of a friendship with her, but she seems to be forever interested in what would you wish for. Every time there's a conversation, she heads towards the wish, which is the title of the episode, of course. The next day at school, after everything that happened the night before, Cordelia is just, a shadow of her former self, is the way she sees herself at this point. And Anya gives Cordelia an amulet that she had said was a good luck charm from her father. And now that Cordelia is so down, Anya uses that as the opportunity to actually give the amulet to Cordelia, puts it around her neck, and maybe you need this more than I do right now. And again, trying to goad her into wishing something bad would happen to Xander. This is her whole thing at this point. Is turns out she is the patron saint of scorned women, essentially, and she wants to use Cordelia to wish something bad on Xander so she can grant the wish and do her thing. But instead, Cordelia wishes that Buffy had never came to Sunnydale, and Anya immediately transforms into Anyeka, the vengeance demon scorned and wronged women, and grants the wish. Flash of light, Cordelia is once again popular in school. The Cordettes are at her beck and call. The Cordettes as Harmony and the group of girls. And there's a guy at school, John Lee, wants to date her. And at the beginning of the episode, he rejects her as well. In the normal timeline, right, when, Anya grants this wish, we get an alternate reality for the remainder of the episode. But this guy, John Lee, in the prime continuity, rejected her, but in this new reality wants to date her. Her happiness is short-lived when she realises that the town is overrun by vampires. The Master has risen, and created a vast army of vampires who terrorise the surviving humans. And most of the students are either dead or vampires. And there's also a nighttime curfew, and students aren't allowed to drive or anything like that. It's just where Sunnydale and the high school at the beginning of the episode was thriving with life, kids everywhere. Now at this point there's absolutely, well, not no one in the school, but there's less than maybe a quarter of what there would have been normally. And Cordelia walking through the streets at night, she encounters Xander and Willow, who are now aggressive vampires, and she's freaking out at this point. She's like, oh my god, I made a wish in this whole brand new reality, and you two are still together, more or less. They're almost like the Spike and Drusilla in this episode. And she's saved by a group of vampire fighters led by Giles. She gets knocked out, of course. Giles rescues her along with Oz is there as well. And they get her back to the high school and the library, and she wakes up and tries to explain to Giles what happened and asks to have Buffy back so that things could be the way they were. But before she can elaborate, she's murdered, which was the part that I'd forgotten about. This episode starts off and it's really set up to be the story of Cordelia and whatnot, but she's really used in this episode to make the transition to this alternate reality, but she's very swiftly murdered in the new reality, and that's something that I completely forgot about. I don't know why it had slipped my mind quite as badly as it had, but of course the Master is alive and well in this reality. Of course he was raised as normal. Buffy wasn't there to stop it, and now he's running Sunnydale essentially, and he finds out that this girl Cordelia had mentioned the Slayer. Of course, whenever Xander and Willow, the vampire versions, attack Cordelia, she mentions Buffy, and of course all vampires know who the Slayer is, and Xander brings this message back to the Master, and he dispatches the two of them to head off to kill Cordelia. But she's, again, it was just something that was not so much a shock. It's an alternate reality episode. We get that in a lot of shows. So, within one episode or maybe a couple of episodes, you're going to get back to the prime timeline again. So, yeah, bit of a shock, but nothing that I'm going to lose any sleep over. Giles then calls Buffy's contacts in Cleveland. He's in Sunnydale, and nobody knows he's a watcher. And in this reality, it's like almost as if he's been kicked out of the watcher circle, more or less. And Buffy was sent to another watcher in Cleveland, and he's able to leave a message for her, and he learns that the amulet Cordelia was wearing is that of Anyanka, whose granted wishes can be undone only if her centre of power is destroyed. But his research doesn't say what the centre of power is, but it makes perfect sense whenever you actually really stand back and look at it. Back with the vampires, the Master has created machinery to industrialise the harvesting of blood from captive humans. Like, he's starting a factory, like your run-of-the-mill abattoir where you take animals and cows, pigs, you name it, and butcher them for meat. He's going to do this with humans as well. So he's created this factory to do that, and Giles on his way home is nearly captured by vampires who are rounding up humans for the plant. But he's rescued by Buffy. The Slayer comes to Sunnydale, coming up towards the end of the episode. And in this reality, she is extremely cold and cynical. It's not the same Buffy that we know. It's one that's just had her ass handed to her emotionally quite a bit, and she doubts that Giles can reverse Anya's spell. He's trying to find a way around it, but does offer to kill the Master. And she's like, where does this guy hang out at? Of course, the bronze in this reality is no longer the teen hangout. It is a vampire nest, essentially, where they all go to party, and it's the headquarters, essentially, for the Master. And she finds out this, heads to the club, and she comes across Angel in there, who's imprisoned in this reality. He came to Sunnydale to wait for her, but of course she never turned up, and he was captured by the vampires and pretty much tortured on a daily basis. And Willow calls him the puppy in this reality, and she has more than enough fun tormenting him. Yes, when she sees that he's a vampire, she initially rejects his help. He offers to take her to the Master of this factory, and when she goes let him loose, the cross that she wears around her neck falls forward and almost hits him in the face, and he freaks out and backs away, and she's like, oh, you can't be serious, and she's going to walk out. But Angel shows her the marks of torture on his chest and says, believe me, I want the vampires dead as much as you do. Yes, great little end to this episode. At the plant, the Master's plant, where he's going to harvest the humans, he starts up the machinery with the first human victim, who is put on the conveyor belt, and she's shocked, stunned, so she's still living, and the machine has these 8 arms with tubes that stab into the flesh of the victim and suck the blood out, so the vampires just, can be lazy, just run these humans through and just drink to their content. Yes, and the cages are around the factory, and there's everybody's there. We know all the familiar faces. Oz is in there, Larry's in there, Buffy and Angel turn up and attack the vampires. And yes, during the battle, Xander kills Angel. You're kind of like, oh wow, we're seeing all the main characters getting taken out in this episode. Back at Giles' house, he's used a spell to summon Anyanka to the house, and she is like, there's a bit of threatening going on back and forth, and Giles is like, the only real power you have is through the wishing, and I'm not going to wish for anything. And she's like, you think so? And she grabs him by the throat and tries to strangulate his face. Strangulate! There's a new word for you. But during this confrontation between Anyanka and Giles, we keep having the flashback to the final battle in the Master's new factory. And of course, Xander kills Angel, Buffy kills Xander, Oz kills Willow, and at the very end we have the face down between the Master and Buffy, and we cut back to Giles finally working out it's the amulet around Anyanka's neck that is the power source, and as he rips it off and goes to destroy it, and he crushes it, and just as it explodes, of course that's the power changing, or the power being destroyed that Anyanka had, and reality's going to reset itself. We're constantly splitting between that happening and what's happening at the factory, and the last thing we get to see in this reality is the Master breaking Buffy's neck and her starting to fall down, and there's that flashlight again. We head back to the normal timeline, and we again get to hear Cordelia making the wish that she wishes Buffy never came to Sunnydale, and Yanka turns around, tries to grant it, but without her amulet she's powerless. And that's where we kind of finish off the episode, where you see all the main crew back to their normal little ways. You know, Buffy and Willow and Xander sitting outside the school. Everybody's alive. It's more of a bright day than what the other reality would have been. It seemed to be very dull every time you seen it. But of course you see Giles there as well, and Anya is desperately trying to, you know, grant wishes, and nothing's happening. And Cordelia walks away from her, and she's like, you know, I wish Buffy never came to Sunnydale. Anya is like, done, realises it doesn't work. And then Cordelia starts making all these more and more random and crazy and stupid wishes, and every time she does one while walking away, Anya's like, you know, done, what's going on here? So great little episode. This show, I still can't believe that it's been so long since this show was out. The original air date for this episode was December 8th, 1998. It only seems like yesterday to me. That's really weird. See, once you get once you get to my age, the 90s seem like yesterday. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. This was directed by David Greenwald, and there's a few little things in here that, you know, that Buffy was going to spin off the Angel very shortly. So I think a big part of this episode was setting up Cordelia to, you know, for the exit from the show. And she went on with Angel to the spin-off show Angel, and she was absolutely fantastic in that series. A choice at the very beginning that I wasn't 100% sure was going to be a good one. Now, Cordelia is a fantastic character, don't get me wrong, but there's not a lot of middle ground with her. And a lot of the episodes, like, you're either going to love the woman or absolutely detest her, and it was kind of that way right up into the third season of Buffy. And for the first probably quarter to a half of Angel, but even by the end of the first episode in Angel, you've seen a huge switch in Cordelia. But yes, I think this episode for me, just watching it over again here, was kind of like the building blocks were starting to be set in place here for Cordelia's exit. And once we get to the end of this run here of season 3 on the podcast, you know, of course we're going to spin off into Angel. We're going to be doing that on the show as well. So all been well, I'm going to try to promise you when uploads are going to be coming. All been well, if I can manage it, every Monday we're going to be doing an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. When it comes time, we're going to be doing an episode a week of Angel, and of course on Fridays we're going to be doing horror movie content. So that's the idea for the show. I've said that before and have fallen off the wagon in major ways, but we're going to try our hardest to get this show back on track and get you some regular content uploaded. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you did indeed enjoy it, and if you never once watched Buffy before, I would highly recommend you doing it. Yes, I was going to go into more detail and actually watching the show, but trust me, get a hold of it somewhere along the line. You can get it through Disney Plus right now, if you've got the right membership. But yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.